Get your copy of my new book, The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith. Considering the days in which we now live, you need this book. Available at Amazon.com and WND Superstore. Get your copy today.
And so, Carl, would you come and give us your insights, please?
All right, do you have any idea how dangerous it is to put a Baptist pastor up right before lunch? I mean, dangerous for me, not for you, because you can just get up and walk out. Dangerous for me. But Pastor Broden, God bless you. Thank you for having me. And Rudy and Aaron Davis, thank you so much for lining all that up, and to the fine folks here. God bless you. I'm glad that you're here. Listen, first of all, thank you for that grand introduction. It was almost like something you'd read off of my website. You know, a good Baptist pastor has 3 points, and so here they are. Obama's a fraud. I want my country back. Wait a minute. That's 2. And God is in control. Amen. Let's go eat. See, I'll be the most popular speaker here today. Oh, listen. Hear my heart very quickly. First of all, I want you to know something about me. The only dog I have in this fight is I want truth. That's all. I want us to be a constitutional republic and not a banana republic. And as we stand here today, we are not a constitutional republic. We can change that, but I'm going to prove that to you in just a moment. Now, let me give you just a little bit about my background. Yes, I have been the senior pastor of this church. I know that's a weird name to folks in Texas, Hickory Hammock Baptist Church. That's the name of a road. It's a major thoroughfare in the county in which I live. It's an area of the community. So everyone there, when you say Hickory Hammock Baptist Church, they know instantly where it is. We're very well known and very popular in our area. When you get outside the area and you say that, people think of a little clapboard church with a hammock out front. But it's not that. It's a rather large church on the Gulf Coast, and I've had the pleasure of being the pastor there for 25 years. But before that, I was in Florida law enforcement for 10 years, almost 6 of those years as a deputy sheriff in 2 different counties, one of them being the capital of Florida, Leon County. And so have some law enforcement experience, investigator's background, did some of my own criminal investigations early on when I was with a smaller department, so I have some direct criminal investigations experience. And so I think that way. I think like an investigator. I think like a law enforcement officer. But now almost 30 years in the ministry, and I have written books and produced videos, and I have a radio program, and so I have a researching, investigative mind. That's just the way my mind works. Well, so 10 years in Florida law enforcement, 25 years as a senior pastor of this church. And then for the last 10 years also, I've had the great pleasure of having a talk radio program on a 25,000 watt AM station, the most powerful AM station from Tampa, Florida to New Orleans. And we cover portions of 4 states by radio broadcast, but we also stream live over the internet. Plus you can listen to me on your smartphone. I'll tell you how to do all that later. But every Friday I have my flagship show, and I produce 3 other radio programs as well, but it's called Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. And we have a large national audience, and it is connected to our YouTube site, which we started 3 years ago. There's about 8 of us working it now. I was one of the original founders. It's called PP Simmons. I'll tell you what that means later. I'm trying to hurry because I want you guys to eat lunch, but I want you to have time for questions, because some of the things I'm going to tell you in a few moments are going to knock your socks off, and you're going to have questions. But through that YouTube site that went viral, some 23 million viewers and 20,000 subscribers in just a couple of years, we connected our radio program to that, and connected that to our radio program, and now every time I'm on the radio, we have callers from coast to coast. So the show has just gone viral, and it's a national show. Now, I'm saying all of that to tell you that in the last, since Obama started running for office, I became and made myself quite an expert, literally, and I'm not using that term loosely, in this whole Obama fraud situation. I became an expert in it quite accidentally, in that I was just, talk radio and a patriot and an ex-law enforcement officer and a pastor, very interested in the political process. And so I'm watching this, and I'm watching Hillary, kind of the front runner, and then McCain. And then I'm watching this guy, this senator, this obscure unknown senator, interesting fellow. But I'm watching him kind of come forward, and then people are beginning to vet him a little bit, as much as he would allow us to. And I began to find out that he was the most liberal voting senator in Congress, more liberal than Teddy Kennedy at the time, and that began to concern me. Then I did some research on his past, and so I'm on the radio speaking about this, and then the issue came up of his identity and whether or not he was constitutionally eligible to be president. Well, I'm a patriot, I'm an American, I come from a law enforcement background, so the law, the Constitution, that immediately attracted my attention to this. So I threw myself into studying it, and I was like Mickey, I was appalled as I began to see that our Constitution appeared to be, at the time, being trampled upon purposely. And so I threw myself into that. Now, because God has given me quite a large voice in the nation, I was able to attract all of the big players in that to my show. And so I have interviewed Dr. Orly Tate several times on my show. I have interviewed several times Dr. Alan Keyes. I've interviewed Dr. Jerome Corsi several times. I had Mike Zullo on my show just a few weeks ago, the lead investigator, Sheriff Arpaio. He said he's going to get Sheriff Arpaio on my show. I've had Joseph Farah, the CEO and president of WorldNet Daily, on my show. I've had, I said Dr. Jerome Corsi, Joe Kovacs, who's one of the lead investigators in this early on my program, and many others. And I'm not trying to drop names on you. I'm just telling you that for many years now, 3 years, ever since Obama started or before, I've been deeply involved in this, and I've talked to the people who've written books and who've investigated who have conducted the criminal investigations. Dr. Alan Keyes, who ran against him and who filed lawsuits in the Supreme Court. And so since then, I also do radio interviews. I've been on probably 600 or 700 different markets through syndication from coast to coast, giving this information from coast to coast on what I know and what I've discovered, and plus my analysis. And I have some unique analysis of this that I want to share with you, coming from a law enforcement standpoint and coming from a standpoint of logic and reason and common sense. I want to share some things with you that not many people are saying, but whenever I share them, people say, wow, that's absolutely dead on true. We're in a mess if we don't change this. So I want to share some of that analysis with you. Now, I gave you all of that just to give you an idea of who I am and what my heart is. I don't care if the person in the White House is black or white or Hispanic. I don't care if it's male or female. I mean, I do care their political agenda, but based upon constitutional eligibility, I don't care if they have a D beside their name or an R beside their name or an I beside their name. I want an American who loves this nation, who will defend this Constitution, who is proud of this nation's heritage and history and wants to make it even better. I want them leading our nation. I don't want our Constitution trampled underfoot. That's the only dog I have in this fight. I want God to be glorified. I want our Judeo-Christian heritage to be preserved and protected and respected and taught. I want us to continue to be the great nation that we have been and that we can be. And we can be better. Oh, we've got a lot of faults, but at least we live in a nation where we can make some corrections. By the way, speak of the 3 branches of government. There's 4 branches of government. The first branch of government is we the people. We establish the court systems. We establish the legislative system. We establish the office of the presidency. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, provide this Constitution. Right? Well, you can give the Lord a hand there if you'd like. So, I'm giving you all this background just to tell you the next things I'm going to share with you, and I'm trying to time crunch this, so the next things I'm going to share with you come from all of that. My law enforcement background, 10 years of radio talk show, and having a relatively prominent national show with attracting a lot of speakers, being involved with people who know what they're talking about, people who are involved in this at the legal standpoint and at the constitutional standpoint, at the Supreme Court standpoint, and in the investigative law standpoint. Now, let me just share some things with you. First of all, for those of you that are concerned about the direction of our nation, and particularly this possibility of this humongous fraud that has been perpetrated upon us, please do not worry about 2 terms, birther and conspiracy theory. When people call me a birther, they say, "Are you one of those birthers?" I say, please define what you mean by that. What do you mean, birther? What does that mean to you? Well, you're one of those people that talks about the birth. Oh, you're asking me, am I a patriotic citizen who cares if the man in the White House who's the commander-in-chief is actually qualified to be the commander-in-chief and have the codes to the nuclear arsenal of the number one superpower in the world? Are you asking me if I care about where the guy was born? Yes, I'm a birther. I'm a birther, and I'm proud of it. Now hear me. I see some law enforcement back here. Guys, back me up on this. My brothers. Y'all back me up on this. All crime begins with a conspiracy. I mean, somebody conspires. Somebody conspires to commit a crime. Well, as a cop, when I was a cop, I'm going to investigate a crime. I come up with a theory about that conspiracy. I begin to investigate that conspiracy based upon my theory. If I discover in my investigation that my theory is wrong and there has been no crime committed, then wonderful. I've done my job as a criminal investigator. If I investigate my theory and discover a conspiracy was enabled and a crime was committed, then I investigate it and I bring charges and I, and carry it through. So people call you a conspiracy theorist. Yes, thank you. I believe there has been a conspiracy to commit crimes and fraud. I have theories about it, and I'm investigating them. Now, I say this on the radio. I say it in pulpits. I say it in tea parties, wherever I speak all over this nation. I say this. I hope to the good Lord I am wrong. I pray that the man that is the commander-in-chief of the number one superpower of the world, I pray that it turns out that he's legal, that he is absolutely constitutionally eligible to hold that office. Then we'll just get him out of there by vote in November because of his politics. But what's scaring me to death tonight politically is the fact that all of the evidence that we have thus far appears to point to the fact, listen to me, that he's not eligible to pick tomatoes in Florida. It appears with all of the evidence as it stands now that we have an illegal alien. We worry about people coming across the borders down here. We say, oh, there's illegal aliens. Folks, we've got an illegal alien as commander-in-chief. That's what is concerning me as an American patriot. Somebody wants to call me a conspiracy theorist. I'll tell you what. You can call me that, and you can think that's an ugly name if you want. I was a cop for 10 years. You're honoring me. I see a conspiracy. I smell a rat, and I've got some theories. And I've been investigating it, and so far I can't get anybody. I've asked people on my radio program. I said, look, if you think I'm off base on this, call me up and tell me how I'm off base. Tell me, present to me proof that the man is constitutionally eligible to hold the office, and I will apologize. I can't get anybody to do that. I mean, I beg people. I cajole people over the air. Call me up. Give me proof. You want to call up and call me a birther. You want to call me a conspiracy theorist. How about this? How about calling my program and presenting 100% proof that this man is constitutionally eligible to hold this office? Now, folks, hear me. In light of Sheriff Arpaio's 6-month criminal investigation, now let me remind you who Sheriff Arpaio is, a 50-year veteran of law enforcement. Okay? Now, the media wants to trash him and marginalize him, and that's how the leftist socialists work. That's the Alinsky rules. That's what they do. If you're getting too close to the truth, marginalize them, name call, trash them, make you afraid to speak out, or somebody won't like you. See, I don't care who likes me. I don't. And that's one of the things that gives me a powerful voice. I don't care. The only dog I have in this fight is truth. Okay? Now, I got to tell you this. My first heart is to advance the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And I know not everybody in here might not be a believer, and so that's okay. And in America, it's okay for you even to be an unbeliever, and we won't cut your head off here, y'all. We won't. We won't. You're under the First Amendment. You're equal as a citizen to me. Okay? Now, you got to answer to God. Okay? My first heart is to advance the kingdom of Jesus Christ, but my second big passion in life is to preserve this constitutional republic, and I think those two go hand in hand. Because if this constitutional republic is preserved, then we can continue to advance the kingdom of Jesus Christ around the world. You know, there's 65 nations of the world where what I'm saying to you right now, before this day is over, 65 nations of the world, I would be in prison, or I'd had my head cut off, or my family would be imprisoned. Do we want that here? We're getting ready to lose it. So wear the name birther proudly. All that means is you care about our Constitution. That's all it means. And be honest enough, like I am, and I know you are, to say that if we discover he's perfectly eligible, I will apologize. I will admit that. I will say, okay, I won't apologize for asking the question, but I'll say, okay, good. Then I was wrong. He was eligible. Now let's move forward with the election. I will do that. The only dog I have in this fight is truth. Somebody calls you a conspiracy theorist, wear it proudly. We see a conspiracy has been committed. Possible crimes have been committed, and we have theories about it. All right, now follow me. In light of Sheriff Arpaio's investigation, 50 years as a criminal law enforcement officer, 30 years at the federal level, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times elected sheriff, I think, for the 3rd time, going on his 4th time. The man is a law enforcement pro. Here's what he did. Brilliant. The media tries to marginalize him. Well, the only reason you did this is because you hate Obama and they're suing you. No, listen. Arpaio didn't investigate anything. Arpaio didn't investigate anything. He's sheriff. He's figurehead. He's the chief law enforcement of the county. He responded to Tea Party groups, petitions. You know what he did? Brilliant what he did. He assembled a 6-man investigative team, 3 of them attorneys with criminal investigation experience, 3 of them law enforcement officers with criminal investigation experience, 2 of them, and I verified this with Mike Zullo over the air, 2 of them pro-Obama supporters that were on the team. They came on the team, and Sheriff Arpaio, Mike Zullo said this over the air, Sheriff Arpaio brought all the birth certificate and all the petitions and everything to this team and said, look, investigate this thoroughly, vet this thoroughly, and here's what Arpaio said. He said, I want to be the sheriff who vindicates the man in the White House on this birther thing. He said, I'm tired. Every time I go to a Tea Party, I want to talk about Constitution and rights, and all people want to talk about is this guy's birth. See, Arpaio didn't know. He thought in the beginning that, you know, it was just kind of a conspiracy, but that they could prove him to be perfectly legal. And Mike Zullo said that he said, I want to be the sheriff that vindicates Obama on this birther issue. Zullo himself told me. He said, Carl, he said, I don't mind telling you. He said, I thought this was going to be a big waste of time. He said, I thought we were going to be able to prove in about 30 minutes to an hour that this guy was totally legal. Zullo said that. He said, I'm not a supporter of his politics. He said, but I, chief investigator, he says, when I was first handed all this, I thought we'd be able to disprove the whole thing. He said, Carl, within the first 30 minutes of us sitting down using our collective investigative minds, looking at the evidence we had before us, all 6 of us realized that a fraud had been perpetrated upon our nation. He said, but we took 6 months then to do the proper investigation process. They got forensics laboratories involved. They got digital document experts involved. At the end of 6 months, they brought it back to Arpaio. The 2 people that were on the investigation team who said that they were pro-Obama, now they proudly call themselves, get this, birthers. I promise you. And Zullo said that on my show. He said they call themselves birthers. They said, we're now birthers. Why? Because these are lawyers and investigators who spent 6 months, got digital document experts, forensics laboratories. They did a courtroom, 1.5-hour courtroom-ready criminal presentation, video presentation, broadcast it to the world, but the world didn't see it thanks to the lamestream media. And they took it to Sheriff Arpaio and said, this guy has committed fraud upon our nation. Mike Zullo and the criminal investigation team, they believe that the fraud originated in Hawaii at the Department of Health. That's where it all started. That's where all the fraudulent documents, that's where the forgery that was put up on the whitehouse.gov, that's where that came from. No wonder they're stonewalling against Arizona and everybody else right now. Now, people, hear me. In light of the 6-month investigation that Arpaio just finished and just presented, and as an ex-cop, I can tell you, that 1.5-hour presentation he gave, that would go to court. That would stand up anywhere. It would stand up to cross-examination, and whoever was on the other side of that would be found guilty and put in prison. I'm telling you, top-notch criminal investigation results. In light of that, now watch this, and in light of the most recent news that's come out in the last couple of weeks, most of you probably know, but if you don't, here's what we have discovered in the last couple of weeks. We now have in print, hard copy evidence that from 1991 to 2007, his publishing agents, Obama's publishing agents, see, he started to write a book when he was the president of the Harvard Law Review, back when he was at Harvard. He was going to write a book called Journeys in Black and White. Journeys in Black and White. That book was never published, but he hired a publishing agent and a publicist. They wrote his biography to prepare for that book, and the biography begins, Barack Obama, born in Kenya, to a Kenyan finance minister, and then they described his mom, I think, said activist in the Socialist Party, something like that. I forgot. Anthropologist. That's right. Anthropologist, raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. He's going to be the author of this book. That was in 1991. Now, that book was never published. But now follow me all the way up to 2007. Before 2007, he did publish a book, Dreams of My Father. Who did he use for his publishers? Same people. Who was his publicist? Same person. What did his biography say on Dreams of My Fathers by that publicist? Barack Obama, born in Kenya, to a Kenyan finance minister. Now watch. 2007, he's a senator and getting ready to run for president. He's already in that process of putting his name out. They re-promote Dreams of My Father. It becomes a New York Times #1 bestseller because of all of it. 2007, his publishers have a biography printed on him. While he's running for president, you know what the biography said? Barack Obama, born in Kenya, son of a Kenyan finance minister, and an American anthropologist, raised in Indonesia and Hawaii. That's when he was running for president. Folks, I just published my first book, published by WND Books. Now, I'm not bragging here, but I'm making a point. Now, listen to me. In pre-release state, it became #1 bestseller on Amazon in Science and Religion. It's still named as #1 bestseller on Amazon right now. It was just released officially just a few days ago. The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith. Now, that's not a cheap plug for my book. I'm going to make a point. You know what's in that book? In the back end and on the back flyleaf, my biography. You know who provided that to my publishers, WND Books? No, I did. You know what we know about his publishers and his publicist from 1991 to 2007? He provided the biography. He approved it. They published it. Mine's out there. Can you imagine if my book said, Carl Gallups, born in Australia but raised in Florida? Well, if I saw that, first of all, if I presented it, that'd be a lie. But second of all, if I presented the truth and it was published wrong, and I just a #1 bestseller, and I'm going to let that stand? No, I would call my publishers. For 20 years, his publishers proclaimed, born in Kenya. For 20 years, his publicists proclaimed, born in Kenya. For 20 years, Obama let it stand. And so I'm going to say, he proclaimed, born in Kenya. Then we come along and say, hey, were you born in Kenya? He says, birther. What? Idiot, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorist. But you know who the original birther was? Not Hillary Clinton. She was one of the originals. Barack Obama. His publicist. His publishers. The original birther is Barack Obama, who said, here's my biography. I was born in Kenya. And I'm proud of it until I think I might be president. Then if anybody mentions it, you remember John McCain during the campaign? People say, hey, we need to talk about it. He said, oh, don't talk about that. What? Obama put it in print? Now, folks, hear me. So Sheriff Arpaio releases this 6-month investigation. News media, you can hear crickets. Silence. Mike Zullo on my show confirmed. I asked him, I said, is it true that major media personalities have been threatened by Obama operatives if they ever mention this in their media platforms? And he said, Carl, it is true. He said, we're getting testimonies, we're getting calls from major media people saying, Mike, we wanted to be there, we wanted to cover this, we want to cover it, but we cannot. My family's been threatened, I've been threatened. Who's threatening you? Obama operatives. Folks, that's not a constitutional republic. That's a Venezuela, that's a Cuba. That's Soviet Russia. That's not a constitutional republic. I want my constitutional republic back. Now, folks, hear me. Hear me. In light of that investigation, now watch. So people say, well, you know, that investigation, that was just junk. That's just from this cop that's got something against Obama. Number one, they're wrong about all that. Number one, Arpaio didn't have anything against Obama. He wanted to clear Obama. He wanted to be a hero in that. Number two, 2 of the 6 investigators were pro-Obama. Now they call themselves birthers. Why? Because of the evidence. Number 3, if you think it's just junk, prove it's just junk. See, now, I produced a video that went viral just a few months ago, and I said, I've got 100% proof that Arpaio's investigation is 100% accurate. Now, that's a pretty bodacious claim for the title of a little video, but I put it up, and I've not had anybody been able to argue with it. You know what the video says? Simple as this, using pure logic. What if you owned the New York Times? And let's say you were in the tank for Obama. I know the New York Times isn't, but let's just pretend. You own the New York Times. You're in the tank for Obama. A little old sheriff, that's the way they're presenting him. Actually, he's a 50-year law enforcement professional. But a little old sheriff out in Arizona, little old hick, he's picking on our poor president, and he's produced this criminal investigation, and his investigation's a bunch of junk. His investigation's a fraud, and he's picking on our president, trying to intimate that our president has committed felonies and treason. A little old sheriff out in Arizona. I own the New York Times, and that's what I think. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to investigate the investigation. And I'm going to expose that sheriff as a fraud. I'm going to drag my investigation of his investigation before the world. I'm going to bring down that sheriff. I'm going to expose him as a fraud. I'm going to win a Pulitzer Prize because now I have the story of the decade. Or, if I'm in the midst of that investigation, if I have any integrity at all, and I come to the conclusion, oh my gosh, like those 2 Obama supporters who were on the investigation team, let's say I come to the conclusion, I own the New York Times, oh my gosh, this investigation proves the man in the White House is a fraud. He's an illegal alien. He's not even a citizen of the United States. He's a citizen of another country, and he's the commander-in-chief of our troops. And if I had any ounce of integrity at all, and I own the New York Times, I could publish the story exposing Obama, bringing down a fraud, propping up the investigation. I now have the story of American history. And I've won a Pulitzer Prize, and the New York Times has been recovered from the ash heap that it's in financially, and the next thing you know, I am somebody, and I have saved America. Or there's a third possibility. I know that Arpaio's investigation is 100% accurate, but I'm in the tank for Obama. I have not 1 ounce of integrity, and so I won't say nothing. Now, which one is happening right now? Which one's happening? Do you understand? 100% proof. So there is where we are. Now hear me. If Arpaio's, and I use the word if because I'm honest about this. I'm fair about this. There's an inkling of a possibility that Obama's completely legal and everything's hunky-dory, but the evidence is on my side that he's not. The evidence is, right, law enforcement guys? The evidence is on my side. We examine the evidence. If it doesn't weigh out, then fine. I'll get on the radio and say it. Look, I was wrong. He's completely eligible. But hear me. If Arpaio's investigation is accurate, we now have all of this in writing from 1991 to 2007 where he said he was from Kenya. His publicist said he was from Kenya. His publisher said he was from Kenya. Now, if you say it, you're a birther and an idiot, but he said it. He was the original birther. We have all of that information and evidence. If all of that is right, if he was born in Kenya, and if he has no birth certificate here, and if he wasn't even naturalized, and if he was, then that would prove he's not a natural-born citizen, so he couldn't be president. But if he wasn't even naturalized, then hear me, folks. Do you know what that means? An illegal alien, a non-citizen, is telling our young men and women today where they must go and fight and where they must die. As commander-in-chief, an illegal alien. We're worried about some Mexican coming across the border. We've got a Kenyan who is running the military of the number one superpower of the world. He has the codes to the nuclear arsenal of the United States of America and all the thugs around him. We're in a constitutional crisis. I want this constitutional republic back. People ask, why is a preacher out there talking like this? Because I'm a citizen. I'm a patriot. I'm a man of God, but I'm also a patriot and a citizen. I was a law enforcement officer. I want our nation to be a nation of laws and a constitutional republic. I do not want us to be a banana republic. You do realize that Venezuela was a constitutional republic till Hugo Chavez took over and did the same junk that we got going on right now. Same thing happened in Cuba. Look where they're at. And the people folded, and the people succumbed, and now they're living in horrible, horrible tyranny. Thank you. We're right around the corner from that happening. Now I'm going to speak to you as a pastor for just a minute. I could talk for hours about this, and I won't, but I could, and I do. I'm on the radio all the time on my show. I'm coast to coast, and I do tea parties, and I'm trying to cram all this into just a few minutes, but I just wanted you to know the gravity of why we're here. This is why you must, just humanly, politically speaking, and it's so hard for me to separate it from the spiritual, and they really aren't separate, but hear me. You've got to talk, you've got to write, you've got to blog, you've got to support people who are, you've got to support candidates who love this nation and love our Constitution. You've got to put them in office. You have to get out there, you have to vote, you have to get involved, you have to come to these meetings, and people that don't come or can't come, you've got to tell them about it, and you've got to get copies of DVDs and books and materials, whatever, and get to people, and you've got to educate and inform, because the mainstream media is not. And if we sit around and wait for somebody, well, Pastor Gallups will do it, Pastor Broden will do it, if you wait for a handful of people to do it, we're going to be a Venezuela. We're going to be a Cuba. And then you guys are going to say, what happened? You have to do it. You have to get involved. Now, let me speak to you from a biblical level very quickly. I happen to believe that God is in control. I also happen to believe that he blesses the efforts and the prayers of his people. And I also happen to believe that we're living in very prophetic times. I'm not setting dates and times. I'm not claiming the end of the world is a certain date. But we're living in prophetic times. Israel's back in the land. We see what's going on around the world. We see what's happening in the Middle East. We've just endured Arab Spring, brought about by Obama. Thank you. By the way, meeting some biblical prophecies. I'll be preaching a little bit about that tomorrow morning. Amazing stuff is happening in our world. I see through the platform and through the eyes of the Word of God. I see through spiritual eyes, as Pastor Broden spoke to us last night so brilliantly. I see what's happening spiritually. I want to be on God's side. I mean, I want to be there. I know our nation is founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. I know that God has had his hand over our nation. I can see him lifting fingers off. I don't know if his hand's completely off. If his hand's ever completely off, we're gone. We just collapse. We're gone. He's lifted some fingers, y'all. He's lifted some fingers. I know that. I can feel that in my bones. We're quickly sliding towards Sodom and Gomorrah right now. And so what I'm saying, those of you that are people of faith, and I don't know who is and who isn't, and if you're not, I'm not talking down to you, but I'm talking now to the people who are people of faith. Those of you who are people of faith, those of you who come from a biblical worldview, please join me. Pray for our nation. Pray for the handful of godly and righteous leaders we do have. We do have some good people in Congress. We do. But they're being shouted down. They're being called birthers. They're being marginalized. They're being called conspiracy theorists, just like we are. And they're having to play that game of how far do I go, because if I lose my office, then I lose my total voice, but I don't want to compromise too much and step on truth. I mean, they're in a mess. They're in a mess. We need to pray for them, pray for our nation, pray for our pastors, pray for our churches, pray for a revival and a breaking of hearts, pray that people would cry out to God for forgiveness for the sins we have committed as a nation, and pray for the restoration of our constitutional republic. And pray that God would continue to grant the freedoms we've enjoyed to our children and to our grandchildren, lest we lose it. I could talk for hours more, but I want to give you a chance to ask questions, and then we're going to eat. We've got 20 minutes. 12:15 is when we're supposed to be over, right? Something like that. We've got a little bit of time to answer questions. If there's only one or two questions, we'll hush, or otherwise I'll answer questions as long as Pastor Broden wants me to. Questions?
Any questions? Surely, I know there's some questions.
There's a gentleman right here.
If not, we'll get the law enforcement guys to come up. All right.
Well, yeah. And I'm already going through my mind things I should be saying, so maybe you'll ask questions. Ask questions, sir.
Could you address, if America falls, what happens to the world?
Yeah, here's what happens to the world. Here's what I believe. I believe that if America goes away tomorrow, I believe our world is going to be plunged in all manner of darkness. Not that America is God's Savior. God is the Savior. Jesus Christ is the Savior, okay? I mean, my heart's settled on that. But I'm just saying God has honored and blessed America. We have blessed the world in so many ways, even with all of our mess, but we've worked through our mess. We fought a civil war, killed 500,000 of each other to end slavery, which needed to end, and we've done those kinds of things, and we've passed laws, and we've worked for women's rights and minority rights. I mean, we're an awesome nation. It takes us a while, and we work through these things, but I wouldn't want to live anywhere else in the world. I mean, you know, everybody's got these messes, but look what America's doing. We give more benevolent aid to nations of the world than any other nation. We feed more starving people than any other nation. When other nations get in trouble, who do they call for? America, help us. America saved the world in World War I. Read world history. We saved the world. We saved the world in World War II. We did. I mean, God did, but through us and used us. We continue to shine the light. Out of America comes more preaching of the gospel than any other nation. Out of America comes more biblical literature and biblical publications and biblical ministries and missionaries than any other nation of the world. If that goes away tomorrow, can you imagine the darkness this world would be plunged into? We are the number one superpower. Many historians and statisticians believe that it would take the next 4 or 5 superpowers together to come to the same power that we hold. I don't know that I would want to trust any other nation of the world with the power that we have. If America goes away tomorrow, if the Constitutional Republic of America goes away tomorrow, our world is plunged into darkness. What I'm saying here today, I will be executed for. If America goes away, if the Constitutional Republic goes away tomorrow. You would all be rounded up and put in jail for being here listening to me. If America goes away tomorrow. That's how grave it is. And we're right around the corner from that happening. If we don't pray and if we don't get involved, we are gone as a nation. Right now, as we're standing here now, listen to me, we are not a constitutional republic. If that man is an illegal alien as commander-in-chief, right now we're a banana republic. That's what banana republics are. They just have any dictator that can get in there and seize power and start manipulating the system. That's what we probably have right now. So how do we get it back? Well, politically speaking, we get it back in November, prayerfully. But there's a lot of spiritual that needs to go in that too. A lot of prayer and a lot of blessing and hand of God. Yes, sir.
I kind of had 2 questions. One is why more states aren't, after seeing the Adobe Acrobat forgery and so forth, it opened my eyes quite a bit, and I thought it was conspiracy before. So why aren't more states getting involved? And then the second...
I can answer that, but okay. Go ahead. Well, let me answer that first. Okay. Very quickly, just stay right there. Very quickly, here's the deal. Congressional Research Service, they issued a report at the request of congressmen. See, the Congressional Research Service is a branch of the government, and it's the investigative arm of Congress. And they were asked by congressmen back in this early birther stage, what's going on with all this? Tell us. Prove to us that he's eligible. The Congressional Research Service issued a report. I've got it in hard copy. W&D ran it. I put it on a video. It went viral. The Congressional Research Service issued a report saying, and this answers your question, when they investigated the whole thing, they said no one, no agency, no group, no one has vetted this president. And then they went on to say, well, here's what they said. Even though the Constitution requires natural-born status, it defines no way to verify that. Now, I took a little umbrage with that statement because the Constitution does say that that responsibility falls on Congress. It does say that, but the Constitutional Research Service says there's no agency. So here's what's happened at the state level. The states, you know, they're electing Congress people from the courthouse to the White House, okay, during their elections. So they don't feel, until this time, they never felt it was their job to vet the president, because here's what happens. The RNC certifies their candidate. The DNC certifies their candidate. And the certification that you were talking about, Mickey, is that they sent it to all the states, the certification, the DNC, and said, we find, here's our candidate, he has been vetted, and we find him to be eligible, except they left off the little phrase, according to the Constitution. They just said, we declare him to be eligible. And Hawaii kicked it back to their good graces until Obama injected himself and his thugs went out there. And the next thing you know, Hawaii is saying, okay, he's eligible. He's eligible. So the answer to your question is, now we don't know what's going to happen from this point forward. That's why Arizona has been working so hard, not the Secretary of State, but Arizona has been working so hard to maybe keep him off the ballot until he can bring legal proof. Other states are trying to do the same thing. But until this case, sir, the states just received the certification from the DNC and the RNC. And until now, that's been good enough. And so they take this, the RNC, the DNC has declared he's eligible. Good, put him on the ballot. So that's the answer to your question. Until now, we've never had a mess like this. Next part.
The next question is even bigger after we get past the election. If evidence does come out that he wasn't eligible, what happens to the legislation that was passed?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. I've researched this. I've asked legal experts, and here is the conclusion I've come to. You do not have to agree with my conclusion. If you don't like my conclusion, please don't be mad at me, but I'm going to be as honest as I can be. There are two schools of legal thought on this. What he has asked is a fundamental foundational question. If we find out this guy is an illegal alien who can't pick tomatoes in Florida, but he has fraudulently gained control of the U.S. military and the U.S. economy, and we discover that we've been invaded by a foreign usurper, and let's say they discover it, they try him, and they put him in prison. Let's just say, and that ain't going to happen, but let's just say it does. All right, let's just say it does. The question is, in light of that, in the face of that, what do we do with all the laws he signed? What do we do with all the treaties he signed? What do we do with... Okay, there are two schools of thought. First school of thought is everything's null and void. Now, I'm going to tell you, in my flesh, that's how I want it to be. But hear me, there's a second school of thought that I think elevates the greatness of this nation and our Constitution even better than that. As much as in my flesh, I would love it to be everything he signed. But now I'm going to tell you the legal truth, and then I want you to think about our nation. The legal truth is this. Because of the way our Constitution is set up, there are checks and balances on all the branches of government. We don't have a king in America. Now, we got a guy that thinks he is, and he's trying to be. But we don't have a king. We don't have a dictator. We got a guy that's trying to be, but I'm saying constitutionally, we don't have one. What we have is the office of president when he signs something. All right, let's say Obamacare. I hate that. If we find out he's a fraud, then that's null and void. But you got to remember, Congress signed off on it. And the Supreme Court thus far has held it up. Now, they might strike it down this summer, be praying for that. But what I'm saying, we're watching the checks and balance system work even there. But the bottom line is, you say, yeah, but he signed a law. He won't defend the Defense of Marriage Act. He did, Okay, but guess who's letting him do it? Other branches of government. And if we put him back in office, then we, the people, the first branch of government, we're letting him do it. So the bottom line is, there's another school of thought that says even if he does wind up in prison, then we've got to work through the legal process to undo those things that are illegal and un-American, because we're a bigger nation than one man. If we say everything he did was illegal, then we're admitting to the world that we were run by one man. You see what I'm saying? It really is a conundrum. We have to be very careful. There are things that he has done that I wish would just go away tomorrow once we prove that he is completely a fraud and usurper. On the other hand, we've got to be careful about declaring to the world that we let one man control the entirety of our country. And I'm going to tell you what, we've got problems with the man in the White House. But I'm going to tell you who else we have bigger problems with: people in Congress. Because they have dropped the ball on all of this. They've dropped the ball. If you got a Congress full of people that love this nation and love our Constitution, it's awfully hard. Hey, Dr. Tace, it's awfully hard. I've interviewed you twice on my radio program. I don't even know if you remember Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. You remember that? Okay. See, I'm dropping names now. Okay. Hey, y'all look at me now. It's awfully hard. Okay, it's awfully hard. It's awfully hard if you got a Congress full of people who love our Constitution, for a president to get away with what's been getting away. So Congress is just as much at fault. Yes, sir. Next question.
Okay. I have two quick questions. The first one...
And you know me, I'm a Baptist preacher, so I'm going to give you quick answers.
Yeah, right.
What? Go ahead, sir.
All right. I consider myself fairly well versed on this situation with this illegal alien in the White House.
Yes.
But I've never heard the bit before that he has published books where he has said he is from Kenya.
1991 to 2007.
How come that has never been brought out?
It has been brought out. If you go to WND.com and if you go to P.P. Simmons, and I've got the videos, Orly Tates has been talking about it, many others, it's out there. But, sir, the problem is most people go home at night, turn on the TV, and watch Fox or CNN or ABC, NBC, CBS, what we call mainstream. They'll pick up the New York Times or their local, the Dallas, whatever it's called, and they'll read that and watch that, and they're not going to talk about it. So that's why these meetings are important. That's why it's important to stay up with people like Dr. Tates and Dr. Manning and where are you? Dr. Wiley over there. Tell me your last name. It's Draper. And the stuff I do and the stuff that WND does, it's important to stay up with that because we are screaming it. We're reporting it. And millions of people are listening and they're getting the information. But mainstream media won't. That's why you've never heard of it till today. Second question.
Okay. The other question I've got is, you have an opinion on the legal firm Liberty Legal Foundation that is filing charges against the DNC to keep Obama off the ballot box rather than filing against Obama himself.
Do I have an opinion on that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to speak unintelligently here. All I can say is I welcome anybody and anyone who is submitting a valid, lawful angle or process to getting this usurper out of the White House. So if they're doing it properly and that's another angle we can take, then I'm all for it. But I don't think I know as much about it maybe as you do. And I'm sorry I couldn't answer that second question as thoroughly. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Pastor, you tell me when to shut up. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, you talked about the government silencing you. Ultimately, they can silence and execute you once things go farther than they.
Yeah, 65 nations of the world. What
Right.
we're doing here today is illegal. 65 nations of the world. Go
But
ahead.
isn't it also true that Lyndon Johnson's administration, when they passed the 501c3, has effectively, at a financial coercive level, done that to many, many pastors? Many pastors think that it's illegal for them to speak out already. And they've already effectively been silenced.
Kind of.
I want to honor you for standing up and speaking, because a lot of pastors live in fear, and they've basically been co-opted into basically going along and being the sheep among the sheep, being fleeced.
In reference to time, let me answer that quickly.
Chuck
Yes,
Baldwin.
thank you. No. He's raised a good point. 501(c). Here's the deal. You're right. Many pastors don't know. The 501(c) law at its core, I think, is kind of fair in that what they were trying to say is if you're going to be a church and you're going to have complete tax exemption, then don't use your church and its money and its finances as a political action committee, because what some people would have done, they would have formed a political action committee And they would have raised money through it and called themselves a church. You see, you know, they were, but just like anything else government does, the unintended consequences are horrible. And so what happened, I think, and it might have been some intended consequences too, but what happened is a lot of pastors said, oh, we don't want to lose our tax-exempt status. All right, the church that I pastor happens to be 501(c)(3). My folks I've been there 25 years, they happen to know that I don't care if they don't want it to be a 501(c)(3), we won't. If they want it to be, we will. It is, and we're reaping the benefits of it, and we're keeping the law. And the law basically says, where'd you go, sir? The guy that said it. What the 501(c) law basically, here's what it basically says, is that on a Sunday morning, in Sunday morning worship, while we're assembled for worship, as the pastor, I cannot bring a candidate into the pulpit and say, this is the man we're voting for. Follow me. Unless I'm a Democrat, then I can do it. Y'all hear me? Now, if I'm a Democrat, I can do that. But you let a Southern Baptist pastor who's registered as a Republican but votes for the Constitution of the United States, you let somebody like me bring somebody in, 501(c), boom. But under 501(c), I can speak to all the issues I want, I can, according to the law. And I do. Also, I'm a private citizen when I'm not in that pulpit. So I get on the radio as a pastor, I say whatever I want. I come to tea parties, I say whatever I want. Say, you're a preacher, you're not supposed to do that. Show me the law. Show me that. 501(c), I'm not in my pulpit. So does that help you? But a lot of pastors don't know this. Yeah, they're intimidated, and a lot of people in government are using those laws to intimidate pastors. And shame on the pastors that don't know. Pastor Broden's one of these pastors do, just like I'm doing. Yes, sir. You're next, sir.
More than anything, a statement, and that is that I'm sort of really saddened over that my president of the United States here has to put into effect a thing called NDAA.
Yeah, okay.
The National Defense Authorization Act.
Okay.
And the cliff notes of that is that if I'm deemed to be one of those people that they're going to want to pull out of the circulation here, they enjoin me of my procedural due process rights.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy.
And you can be detained at the word of the president.
And on top of that, they can pull me out of the area and put me into some undisclosed location.
Okay.
They have to make no disclosure of where I'm at to my people,
Let me address that.
my family.
Let me address that. And we're running slap out of time. Let me address that. And the bottom line, what he's saying is correct, and the bottom line is this. That's why I said, he said my president. I know he said that with a little bit of sarcasm. What?
No, it's true. He's my president.
What?
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron.
What?
Look, I just need to say this, right, quick. No more questions, all right?
Okay.
We're going to have these men ask their questions, and I'm going to encourage you, Carl, to pretend that you are a Presbyterian.
Okay. Okay.
And answer these questions quickly.
Okay. Okay.
Quickly.
NDAA, your president hasn't acted. Here's my Presbyterian answer. He is not the president yet. You said my president. He's in the White House. He's occupying it. Okay? Okay, please apologize for that. Okay. All right. NDAA has many evil elements. It needs to disappear, and it scares me that a illegal alien is commander-in-chief and has enacted and presided over NDAA. That's another reason why we need to get rid of him and every congressman that supported it. That's my Presbyterian answer. Yes, sir. Next question.
If the occupant of the White House is an illegal alien Manchurian candidate, if the press is owned or controlled
or intimidated
the real question then is he a puppet, and who's the puppet master of the press and the president?
Okay, the answer, yes, probably George Soros and others. Dr. Orley Tates can probably address that much deeper than I can, but the answer is yes, and those people and others. He's surrounded by filthy rich socialist cronies who are propping him up. More than likely he is the puppet, and there are puppet masters behind him. How was that for Presbyterian? Am I doing better, brother? Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Candidate for judge. Yes, sir.
Quick comment. Every state could adopt statutes that require
yes, they could.
Every candidate,
yes.
not single out president,
and some are trying.
Every candidate to prove. It would be future looking, of course.
Yes.
And in 1994, in Dallas County, the Republican Party required every one of us who filed for office to prove eligibility. We had to go find our law licenses and,
Praise God for
and
Dallas
other
County.
things and submit them all. And Bob Driegert made everybody prove their their ability to run.
Good.
And that could be done.
It could be done, absolutely. Thus far, it has not been done. But every state could. There are some states that are working on such legislation right now, but they're running into a stonewall of leftist, socialist resistance. But some states are trying to do that. Yes, sir. How was that? Was it a Presbyterian answer? Was that good? Okay. Yes, sir. I'm getting better. I went from Baptist to Presbyterian just because the man told me to. Yes, sir.
This may be a greater problem, me trying to figure out how to ask a Presbyterian question.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
But,
and then we're going to eat barbecue after this.
All things considered, since Obama's come into office, when he's been in office, we've witnessed something we've never seen, the coming of the Messiah, if you will. There are people out here who are ignorant, who are closed-minded, who are not open, and I mean, you know, he is the
He's
leader.
the one.
He's the one.
Oprah Winfrey said he's the one. Yeah.
If the things come to pass that we want to see come to pass, that we can prove, or they cannot prove, however it comes about, that he is an illegal alien, he's not eligible, or he gets kicked out of office, whatever, what do you see the reaction of the country being? I mean, a lot of us will be celebrating, but there's a lot of people going to go off the deep end.
All right, here's my Presbyterian answer. We're a nation of 350 million people, 330 million people. This might be a bit naive. I'm 56 years old, so I'm not stupid. I might be naive, but I'm not stupid. And I'm not just a young whippersnapper. I happen to believe, listen, Orly, help me. Dr. Tates, what was the general who last year went on the radio circuit and said that the FBI and the Congress knew he was illegal, but they were afraid of black backlash? What was his name? Okay. There was, I will think of his name in a moment. Thank you for that, Dr. Tates. And I didn't mean to put you on the, what? No, not Lakin. Who? Yes, General Valley. General Paul Vallely. Listen, this is very important. Answers your question. This time last year, he was on talk radio coast to coast. He said in his position as general, U.S. military, he knew, these were his words now, he knew for a fact that the FBI knows that he is an illegal usurper. Many people in Congress know, because now they know all that Dr. Tates and I have done, and others and you guys and Dr. Manning and everybody. They know. He said, in the radio broadcast, well, why won't they do anything? And he said, they, to a person, say they are afraid of black backlash, which is what you were speaking of. Who asked me that question? Where'd he go? Okay, you did. All right, now hear me. I may be naive, but here's what I think. Our minority community in the United States, Hispanics, blacks, etc., other Asians, whatever. Listen, I think if presented with the hard, cold fact evidence, if the mainstream media were doing its job, I have confidence in our people. There will be some idiots, whites, blacks, Hispanics. There will be idiots. There are idiots in every people group in our nation. There will be some. We saw the rioting in the 60s and 70s. You just deal with it. But you've got to decide, are you going to be intimidated by the possibility of a backlash, or are you going to be in a banana republic? Are you going to be a Venezuela? I have confidence in our people. I have confidence in people of all colors and all races in our nation that love our nation and just want to go to work and live in peace and raise their children. And I believe that if we can get this out before the people, and if we can prove and show and get him out, then my belief is that we can restore our constitutional republic, and that there might be a backlash, but I don't think it's going to be the destruction of our nation. That's my hope and prayer, and that's what I believe. I believe in our people more than our congressmen do, apparently. Okay. I think it's an insult to the black community. It's an insult to the black community to say that all the blacks are going to riot, because that's an insult. That's an insult. We've got a lot of smart white folks and black folks and Hispanic folks. When presented with the evidence, they're going to say, you know what, he needs to go. We've got idiot white folks and idiot black folks and idiot Hispanic folks, and some of those will be stupid, but you just deal with that. You just deal with it. Or either you lay back and say, I'm afraid of what somebody might do, and you let us become Cuba. Pastor, thank you. You've been very gracious. We're 5 minutes late, and that's not bad for a Southern Baptist pastor.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you, Carl.
Get your copy of my new book, The Magic Man in the Sky, Effectively Defending the Christian Faith. Considering the days in which we now live, you need this book. Available at Amazon.com and WND Superstore. Get your copy today.